And I want to change the way that people write code, and people now AI write code. I want to really make it so that people can work on data and not have to think sort of at every level of the stack.
Welcome to Footsteps to Future, a show about innovations that are shaping our posterity.
We are your hosts, Bennett
and Nicolas Schoell. And today, we talk to the CTO and co-founder of DAGWorks Inc, Elijah Ben Izzy, to get some insight into how he feels AI might impact his company.
We asked him how his company works, what he's doing, and what he sees for our future.
Yeah, so I'm really in a technical space. I've been working in software and math and computer science forever. But what we do, so if you know the world of like AI, data science, machine learning, you're starting to sort of see more of it with ChatGPT, with all of these tools I think we're going to be talking about more. I build tools to transform data. So I build tools to make it easier to build sort of data transformations that can really work at a team level. So an enterprise that wants to sort of take data, transform it, and put it into algorithms can really do that with ease, right? And understand what they did and make it so that their teams can sort of communicate better about the data they're transforming. It's really a question of how it uses it. So if you know the difference between like horizontal and vertical, right? Horizontal is something that is like applicable across all sorts of industries. A vertical is going to be like one sort of very narrow space. We're much more on the horizontal side. We've got people using our tools for like everywhere, like beverage distributors. We've got different governmental organizations, etc.
When talking to Elijah, we learned a little bit more about his story. He started his work in the world of AI, creating a data-based and machine learning program for a company called Stitch Fix.
Stitch Fix is a clothing company that uses AI to create a type of For You page of fashion and outfits for users. To effectively apply AI to ideas and startups, as Elijah did both at Stitch Fix and his current company, it's essential to grasp what an AI is and how it functions.
Yeah, so at the very high level, what it does is it turns, so in computer science, the term string is just like letters, right? So it's a string, a prompt is a string. So it'll take that string, it'll then do something called an encoding, right? So it'll turn those letters into numbers, and these numbers can be called a vector, right? Just a group of numbers. And so it just takes something in the space of letters, the way that you think about it, and the space of words into numbers. These numbers can sort of correspond to different things, and then it feeds those numbers through a whole bunch of complicated stuff, right? And the complicated stuff is, you could call it a function, right? It's sort of a nonlinear approximation to a function is like the really technical term for it. But really, it just takes those numbers, does like multiplications, divisions, whatever, turns them into more numbers, does that again, turns it into more numbers. And at the end, it takes that out and it turns them back to letters, right? So you have an encoder, you've got a bunch of transformations, and you've got a decoder, which isn't a satisfying answer because that just tells you the structure of it, but not anything about what it actually does. But the key to know, sort of the key way to think about it is you've got this encoder, you've got this sort of whole bunch of transforms and this decoder, and those are built, like the way that those are built, and sort of they're called parameters, like the structure of that, and really like the structure and like the shape almost, is determined based off of something called training, which is you give it a whole bunch of data and it tries to seem like a realistic thing, right? So there's an old Alan Turing, the sort of famous scientist, describes something called the Turing test, which is where you talk to an AI and it can, if it convinces you that it's not an AI, right? If it convinces you that it's a person, then it's passed the Turing test. But it turns out, I think the Turing test is just the beginning, and getting it to do scripts is one thing, getting it to make me faster and more productive is another thing. Getting it to sort of think on its own and build is extremely complicated.
Elijah's company, DAGWorks Inc, has two different programs, Hamilton and Burr. Hamilton standardizes the way that individuals and teams express data and machine learning.
Burr, on the other hand, standardizes how information is stored, written, and executed.
The reason that these programs stand out at first glance is the fact that they're both built in open source.
Open source commonly means that the source code of a software or project is freely available for anyone to view, use, modify, and distribute. However, there are licenses and limits to how this code can be accessed. Some will allow full manipulation of the program. Others, like DAGWorks, only let you view it.
Ironically, many open source AI models are not so open.
Yeah, so it's a whole complicated ecosystem. So open source, so a few of them are venture backed, meaning that they expect them to monetize at some point. There will always be a free part and there will always be a paid part. That's like us. A lot of times companies will release things with the goal of like sort of not of changing, like not of making money off of this, but of kind of leading the world in a direction. And for them, it's always like that direction will end up with them making more money. And then there are just people who make stuff for free. Sometimes they've hit the jackpot and retired. Sometimes they're just doing it for fun. Sometimes they don't care about money. More power to them. I think that's in this society largely unsustainable and not something you can really rely on. And in the open source world, that sort of issue of people doing things for free has caused a lot of complicated issues. So one of the problems with people just relying on people to do stuff for free is security. And there are all sorts of recent attempts to put a backdoor into different systems that'll make them less secure, right? So you have something called a license that dictates how your code is used. And we're building a company that's based largely on open source, right? So the goal of that is to make it so we have tools, we can make it as easy as possible for anybody who wants to pick it up and use it. And then at some point, we're going to upsell on that, right? We're going to find sort of enterprise value, right? Because 90% of the people using it are going to give you good feedback. 10% of them might be at a bigger company that have like just the need for more complicated stuff. Whatever it is where you want to sort of understand how your data flows through, then that's where you monetize and that's where you sell products on top of it. That said, it is a challenge, right? The value of an open source business in the software world is that you can easily reach people and you have a natural distribution channel. And if you build something valuable, people will just kind of come and use it.
Yeah.
The cost is that it's not easy to monetize, right? So there have been a lot of companies that have done really well here. If you've ever heard of like Red Hat or MongoDB, they've all built, I mean, it's like kind of odd companies to think about, but they're big companies in the software world, right? They've all built things around the open source ecosystem. And some of them have become more closed source over time. A big one called HashiCorp was just bought by IBM after they changed it to be less open source. They changed their license.
The truth is, we don't know what the future holds. In fact, no one knows what might come around the corner. However, we can make theories and speculations. AI is powerful, and as it unfolds, it may have impacts that we might not be ready for.
But, as Elijah insightfully told us, the only constant for humans is change.
Talking to Elijah reminded us that our future is untold. Elijah's story of starting DAGWorks reminds us to take that leap of faith.
Make that change that will affect our future. Thanks for listening. See you next year.